Good morning and welcome. My name is David Murray and I'm a Marketing Programming Manager at CradlePoint, and I'll be your host today. Before we get started, allow me to note a few things about today's call. Namely, the phone lines of all attendees are muted, so if you have a question during the webinar, please input your question in the chat field at the bottom of the GoToWebinar pop-out box. We'll look to address those questions in a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Today we're talking about wireless backup or failover. And I think it goes without saying, when something as mundane as a squirrel can bring a Fortune 500's networks to its knees, that having a failover strategy is critical to business continuity. So if you're looking for ways to improve the speed to deployment, the availability of your backup network, then this webinar is for you. Here to discuss in more detail is David Rush, a Senior Product Manager at CradlePoint. As a product manager at CradlePoint, David is mainly responsible for managing the future product development roadmap as he works with R&D. Prior to CradlePoint, David worked as an ASIC design engineer at Marvell Semiconductor. David has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. David also holds an MBA from Boise State University. With that, I'd like to introduce David.
All right, thank you, David. It's a pleasure to have you all here today, and today we're going to be talking about the high cost of network downtime. The agenda today looks something like this. We are going to be talking about the networking challenges in the distributed enterprise, and along with the high cost of that network downtime, and what are the key drivers that are making network downtime so much more expensive than they were at 5, 10, or even 3 years ago, and some of the outages and the reasons for those outages, how they're caused, man-made or natural disasters. And then I'll be talking about the 3 strategies we have for integrating wireless failover into your environments. The one is the overlay failover, adding failover to an existing environment. One is a single block solution CradlePoint offers, and then we have the more innovative cut the wire strategy, where you have failover with the networks running purely off the 4G networks. And then I'll talk about cloud management and how important that is for distributed enterprise and critical in these customer deployments to have that, along with the analytics for business continuity, and then wrap it up. So this is sort of what the new network landscape looks like, both the macro and the market and the micro industry trends. And where CradlePoint really fits is the convergence of the wired and the wireless worlds. You know, we've got the wired world where you've got your network really locked down, and the market driver right now is in mobility. Is customers and employees are requiring internet connectivity wherever they are. And in the wireless world, you've got cell phones and devices out there, and it's more of an unregulated space where you've got way more devices and people accessing the wireless network, and you've got these cloud-based applications that are critical for businesses to run. And the key enabler here is 4G. And where CradlePoint has the experience with 4G, the networking, and the wireless world, there's this converging market trend where we can drive an industry-wide technology refresh. So first of all, who is our customer? It is distributed enterprise, and what CradlePoint has dubbed small footprint distributed enterprise, locations with hundreds to thousands of locations. This could be anywhere from a retail store, maybe the size of a Walgreens or a CVS, all the way down to a kiosk. And they have a bunch of common needs, being network availability being a critical one. They have no local IT support. PCI compliance for running credit cards is critical for the industry, and Wi-Fi and mobility are key to the business strategies. We're also many restaurants, quick-serve restaurants with thousands of locations across the country and worldwide with razor-thin margins. You got your branch offices, particularly in the financial branch offices, tax prep, financial. We also work with convenience stores. You have gas stations where if you can't take a credit card, you really can't do business, as well as digital signage. And we're there not only to deliver the digital signage content, but also for customer interaction, where they interact with that digital signage on the street, as well as the video that's monitoring what that digital signage is displaying. And we also have a very, very strong presence in kiosks, where it's basically a retail store in a box. You've got your credit card processing for getting the merchandise. You have the inventory management in that box as well. You have the digital signage displaying advertisements on the box, as well as all the other cloud-based applications that need to run. And then we're also in the transportation industry. If you think about a bus, this is really it can often be a retail or digital signage on space. You've got the signage on the outside of the bus as it's going by. As the customer gets on the bus, they swipe their credit card or their other card to gain access to that bus, and you need to process that. You've got a video camera watching the passengers and the drivers, and then you've got digital signage inside the bus that's targeting a different clientele than those that are outside of the bus. And so this is the distributed enterprise with hundreds to thousands of locations that CradlePoint is dedicated to serving. And this is kind of what that space looks like for the typical customer. You've got your point of sale terminals out front. You can think of this as being a small branch office or even that bus as you're coming in. You've got your customer area, and you need to serve Wi-Fi to both the customers and the employees. You've got your surveillance cameras, your VoIP phones. You've got your manager's back office with a computer, another VoIP phone, and then you have your equipment room, which is often just a shelf in the manager's closet. And then you also have the digital signage and kiosk of these spaces. And so is your business increasingly reliant on these cloud-based applications? And in many places, you need this WAN diversity that we're going to talk about today to both increase bandwidth and the resilience of the network for business continuity. Are you engaging your customers with mobile devices and employees as well? Do you want to serve up ads to your customers and have your employees out on the floor with pads versus having them to sit in the back office all the time to do their work? And for that, you need network segmentation, the best-in-class Wi-Fi that CradlePoint offers, and then also both public and private access. You want your customers to be able to go to the public network, and then you also want your employees to be on a separate network, as well as network segmentation for your point-of-sale kiosks. And then also, you want tight deadlines with long IT queue. And so in this case, and many times, what you'll do is you'll actually put together a separate network with just a 4G solution to provide primary connection for kiosk and digital signage, and the time to deployment for these is much, much faster. And then is the network secure at the most vulnerable point? This is absolutely critical for businesses, especially those running credit card processing, because you need to maintain your PCI compliance so you can actually run your business and be able to lock down the security both locally and remotely and monitor access to the network and anomalous traffic. And then do you have on-site IT to manage these resources? And in the case of small footprint distributed enterprise, the branch office, the kiosks, the ATMs, the buses, and transportation, there is no on-site IT resources. So you need a great cloud management solution for managing, monitoring, and deploying these devices. And then you'd also like to be able to deploy new applications and services to enhance the value to your customer remotely as well. And so this is the common networking challenges that folks in our industry present. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about CradlePoint and how we have become the trusted leader in enterprise grade of 4G LTE networking for distributed enterprise. We are 100% focused on the requirements and needs of distributed enterprise. This is our target market. This is who we're going after, and we have a proven cloud-based solution for monitoring, configuring, and managing large deployments in real time. And then we have the 4G expertise, as well as strong background to Wi-Fi, security, networking, and remote management to provide our customers' needs. And I'll talk a little bit more about this 4G LTE networking expertise. We have very, very strong carrier partnerships, and we were the first to support LTE, a business-grade LTE router in Verizon back in 2010, and we have been working closely with Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint since then to provide an enterprise-grade experience over the 4G network. We are trying to make the wired network the wireless network just as reliable as that wired network, and we've worked closely again with Verizon. We were the second to come out with a business grade router on AT&T, and when Sprint was looking for an LTE router solution, they said we want CradlePoint, and so we worked hand in hand with Sprint to come out with the first LTE router on the Sprint's network. And the reason we're so good at this is because we've been at it for so long as well, working really closely on a daily basis with these carrier partnerships and understanding that the needs of businesses are not the same as those of a phone, a tablet, or a hotspot, where you can just shut down the network connection as often as you need. Or say, for example, if you want to keep that network connection up all the time, but not use up the customer's data or make the carriers unhappy, you keep an open channel and send a ping across for every 10 seconds. So CradlePoint's developed proprietary algorithms to maintain an open, stable connection without using customers' data and keeping the carriers happy by not pinging their towers, like, say, every 10 seconds. And, of course, we've been recognized in this space with several industry awards. So now what are the key drivers that are driving the critical need for a constant network connection? Why is the network connection now the Achilles heel of the cloud? Well, on the retail side, it often has to do with these point-of-sale applications, the credit card processing, also the customer loyalty cards. You need a network connection so you can print out that digital receipt and say, hey, if you come back now with this coupon in the next 2 days, we'll offer you this special offer. And I love these digital receipts, by the way. I went to the store the other day and they say, hey, do you want me to email your receipt, print it off, or do both? And I'm like, you just email it to me, because I lose that little piece of paper all the time, but I never lose my email because it's stored in the cloud and I have access to it everywhere. Also, you want real-time inventory and distribution. If they buy a product right now, it's the last one on the shelf, you want to make sure it's on the truck, it's arriving tomorrow. And then also the mobile and social applications are very critical. And on the branch office space, you need access to your customers' records all the time, and they're not stored at the branch office. Say you've gotten a car accident, there's a report done on the street, the customer fills something out online, they come into the branch office, that data has come from all over the place. You need access to it in the cloud right then for billing, the quotations, also the loan applications and tax preparation. And so this is why the network connection availability is so critical for retail stores and branch offices. So what is the high cost of downtime? Well, first of all, 60% of network failures are due to human error. And when that backhoe comes down and digs up that trench, it's going to be digging up probably both wired connections. You've got your cable, your DSL, your T1. Those are all generally buried in the same trench. The total cost is about $26 billion of revenue lost to network downtime each year. And kind of a funny stat here, squirrels account for about 17% of T1 line damage. And in fact, in 2010, the entire Yahoo Santa Clara, California data center operation was taken down by a squirrel. And this is just to say nobody's immune to these outages are going to happen, whether it be through natural disasters, human error. The cost of downtime varies per location, but we do know in the retail industry, margins are razor thin. So that little bit of downtime can be the difference between having a positive quarter or a negative quarter. And the customer experience at the branch office is also critical. If the customer comes in and the records aren't available, they can't get a quote, can't process their claim, they're going to be pretty unhappy. Also, those card fees are very, very high, or can be very high for store-to-forward transactions, especially for the smaller transactions. Sometimes those credit card fees, if you have a network connection, they're about 3%. If that network connection goes down for a small transaction, those fees can be as high as 30% for businesses. And the traditional approach to backing up for failover using a POTS line, or a phone line or a DSE or whatever you want to call it, the bandwidth just is not capable to handle all these cloud-based applications. I sent a fax the other day to order a birthday cake, and it took 33 seconds to transmit 1 page of data, which just goes to show that the traditional phone line isn't going to be great for backup. The last mile diversity is also critical. Again, with that backhoe hits, it's taking out all the wired connections in that last mile. So 4G connection provides last mile redundancy and diversity. And then when the networks go down, when there's catastrophic disaster, the 4G LTE connection is generally the first one back up, and I'll talk about that now. Businesses also need to be prepared for these natural disasters or just any network disruptions. And when Hurricane Isaac hit a couple of years ago, it took out a lot of infrastructure. And often what people don't realize is the wired infrastructure is often what goes first. That wire, the water gets into the wires, the ground, and that infrastructure can take weeks to months to get back up. When Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005, one of our larger clients realized they needed to have a network backup. They're one of the larger insurance claim providers, and so they bought 17,000 routers, CradlePoint routers, and deployed them so they could have a backup location or backup internet connection at all of their branch office locations. And the industry has been following them there. When I was listening to NPR last year after the Moore, Oklahoma tornado hit, they were talking about how every company with the name either farm or state in its name was down there with a mobile command center, which meant there was a lot of CradlePoint routers helping customers processing claims because that 4G connection was up and available to run for them. And when these natural disasters hit, especially in the insurance and the retail industry, this is when your customer needs you the most. And if you can see that the sign down there in the bottom left, it says cash only, because they don't have the wired internet connection to pass us those credit cards. And so this often turns away customers. It slows down the transaction times, and it's not a great experience for either the store or the customers as they wait outside to get their food. But if you've got a 4G connection, that'll often allow you to continue to serve your customers even when the wired infrastructure is down. So why 4G? What is so great about it? Well, first you've got the great speeds. You've got the better bandwidth, the lower latency, as well as the recovery time. So when those natural disasters hit, the wired infrastructure goes down first, and it takes weeks to months to come back up. But in the case of these large catastrophic disasters like hurricanes or tornadoes, the cellular carriers have these colts or cows on standby that sell on light truck or sell on wheels that they can drive into those locations and have a temporary cell tower up within hours of a natural disaster. Also, the wireless plus wired redundancy equals availability. When you've got those DSL or cable outages, the typical downtime is between 0.5% and 1.5% of the time. If you combine a wired and a wireless connection at the same time, you can get up to 4, maybe even 5 nines of reliability in practical application at the fraction of the cost of a T1 with an SLA, and better real-life availability for the instances where a backhoe hits the wire. And then there's also the advantage of being able to install the 4G connections faster, both for a primary connection as well as the failover connection. And in the case, we have a case study on our website talking about Pandora retailer in the stores. They said, hey, it was going to take us 6 to 8 weeks or 4 to 6 weeks to get a DSL drop to be able to open our store. We realized we wanted a failover connection, and we looked at CradlePoint. We noticed we could actually open the store 4 to 6 weeks earlier just by using the 4G connection as the primary network connection. And so that's what they did. And when that DSL line drop came in 6 weeks later, they plugged that into the CradlePoint router and used that as their primary internet connection with the 4G there as failover, saving themselves $50,000 to $100,000 what they thought was the opportunity cost, being able to open that much earlier. So what are the 3 strategies for implementing failover in businesses? The first one I'll talk about is overlay failover. This is designed to leverage the existing network infrastructure. You already have your router, you have your policies, you have your Wi-Fi set up the way you want. All you want now is to add a 4G overlay failover connection so you have a redundant last mile connection. And this is where we have a CradlePoint adapters, where it converts a 4G connection to a wire. So you can plug it into an existing redundant WAN port on a wire to give you effectively two wired connections that you can fail over and fail back between. It's designed to plug into the existing router, whether it be a Cisco, a Juniper, a Sonic, or whatever you have. That adapter can be placed in an optimal position to get great RF location. It's easy to connect to the existing router with PoE for flexible placement, and no changes is required in this case to the firewall or configuration policies. You just have to have the 2 WAN connections on that existing router, and this is sort of what that deployment looks like. You can place the CradlePoint router flexible location where you've got the best cell signal in the wire, because in the equipment room it's often deep inside the building, maybe in a basement or wire closet, somewhere where the cellular RF signal cannot reach. So you place the CradlePoint device where the signal is great, connect it to the equipment using existing cabling within the building. Again, that Ethernet cable is often already in place, but if it's not, you have to use either low loss coaxial cable that costs $1 per foot to install, or you can use the Ethernet, which is pennies to install. You plug that wire into the redundant WAN port of a existing firewall or router, and you can place that CBA 750B anywhere you need it to be, even if you don't have power, so you can save yourself the electrician costs for wiring that power, because it runs off of Ethernet, power over Ethernet. The second strategy is the single box solution CradlePoint has to offer. This is where you're looking to replace your current infrastructure. It's long, maybe the SmartNet contract is up and it's going to cost you a lot of money to renew that, or perhaps the device is being end of life and you're ready for a total network refresh and looking for the next generation of wireless or wired infrastructure. CradlePoint has devices for this where the radio, 4G radio, is built into the device, plugs in connecting to that, it broadcasts Wi-Fi, connect all of your local LAN devices, your Wi-Fi devices, and then you plug in your DSL or cable modem into the Ethernet port of the CradlePoint router. And in this case, the CradlePoint is the one that handles the failover, failback between the wired and the wireless internet connections. And the CradlePoint router has all the network infrastructure, all the advanced routing protocols, the VPNs, the OSPF, BGP, RIP, as well as that high-grade intelligence that knows when and how to fail over between wired and wireless connections, or load balance if you'd like the additional bandwidth as well. And then finally, we have the cut-the-wire solution. This is what some of the more innovative customers in the industry have been looking at. Why do I need a wired connection at all? Why do I need to pay for that line drop, the expensive installation, the trenching for the DSL, the cable, the T1? So we have some customers running completely off the wireless internet connection. And the way they do redundancy with this is built into the CradlePoint routers. There's two modems, one that talks to one carrier, one that talks to the other, and you can load balance or fail over, fail back between these two connections to serve up and provide high availability for your branch office location running purely off the 4G network. This is done with our Air 2100 series cut-the-wire solution. It's got the two integrated modems to talk to two cellular carriers at the same time, providing ultimate WAN diversity. Up to 4, maybe somebody got a little happy there, 5 nines of uptime availability. This is the cut-the-wire solution. Again, it provides that load balancing as well as the failover, failback, and also multiple SIM cards to provide that ultimate reliability and availability with multiple carriers. One of the case studies we have is with the United Oil. They actually run their entire business. They're a regional convenience store provider that runs their entire fleet of, I think it's 100 and some convenience stores, primarily off the 4G network, providing that secure real-time management. They are able to avoid that network downtime. And their compliance support for being able to lock down their routers, getting the alerts, and their management is all handled through CradlePoint's Enterprise Cloud Manager. We also have American Apparel, a case study with them. They have their retail store locations. They were providing that high-speed failover and VPN support using the management platform to help provide the PCI DSS compliance, and it's cloud managed. This is using the ARC MBR 1400 to run the American Apparel with their failover for their retail location. We also have help for customers looking at maintaining their PCI compliance. We've just recently updated our PCI compliance spec with the 3.0 requirements that need to be taken or applied by the end of the year. This is a 70-page white paper that we have available to help customers understand the requirements and make sure they meet the needs of the PCI compliance. And then we also have our Enterprise Cloud Manager solution, which provides the strong WAN analytics to manage and create intelligent networks. We have dashboards to easily see how much data you're using on the 3G, 4G networks to make sure you're not going to suffer from overages. You can monitor the signal quality and alerts, see how many failover events you've had and fail back, and how long the wired network connection was down, and how much money you've actually saved by not going down in the interim. And you can analyze the occurrences of those failover and failbacks. And so now we'll talk a little bit about our Enterprise Cloud Manager, why it is so critical for a distributed enterprise to have a remote management solution. Again, you have no on-site IT resources. And Enterprise Cloud Manager is the first of its kind, real-time network management and application platform optimized for the 4G network. This means when you make a change in Enterprise Cloud Manager, that change takes effect immediately on the router. It's designed for that real-time application, but it's optimized for the 4G network. It uses up to 10 times less data than, say, an SNMP protocol, so you don't chew up that data over the management, over management traffic. It's also used to deploy the routers. You can install and configure, create one configuration that can apply to 1,000 routers all at once, so it saves you a significant amount of time there. You can manage the device by doing health monitoring, again, those fail-back occurrences. You can check for configuration changes, and then you also need to maintain firmware upgrades. Again, to maintain PCI compliance, the firmware needs to be updated within 90 days of release, and you don't want to drive a truck around all 4,000 locations every 90 days when there's a new firmware that comes out. And so you can deploy this remotely through Enterprise Cloud Manager. It also helps to secure the router. You can monitor for unauthorized access attempts. There's a rogue AP detection, so hey, there's an SSID I don't recognize, to send an alert to the administrator. You can also lock down the configuration so that when a customer or when somebody on site, maybe the employee there thinks, hey, I know how to set up this network better than the main guy. I'm going to open up this port so I can BitTorrent the local location. The Enterprise Cloud Manager can shut that down. It also, again, gains that intelligence with those dashboards I talked about. And then we also have customizable open API. So they say, hey, I have already got my main management infrastructure. I've got HP OpenView or SolarWinds. I don't want a different management platform for all 8 different devices I have at my office location. Well, in that case, what you can do is use those APIs to have one management platform. Say, hey, I've got my little green dot next to my CradlePoint router. When that turns yellow or red, then I want to open up the Enterprise Cloud Manager to get in there to do all that super feature-rich functionality that those other platforms can't offer, but you don't need to open it up unless there's a change that needs to be made in Enterprise Cloud Manager. So CradlePoint provides an end-to-end solution in the cloud-managed intelligent networking. First, you need to assess the environment, check the cellular reception, and CradlePoint offers 3G and 4G site surveys where we send a suitcase on site with our fleet of about 18,000 folks that can come on site in the U.S. and Canada to measure site signal. So you make sure you've got the best reception on the correct carrier so you can deploy it with the right solution from the outset. We also provide great planning for the network solutions. Do you have the right carriers? Do you have the right device? Do you have the right solution to provide Wi-Fi, security, primary wired connection, and the wireless? And then for deployment, we have the Enterprise Cloud Manager. We also provide installation services with our fleet of 18,000 folks that can be deployed anywhere in the United States. And then for the configuration of the device using Enterprise Cloud Manager, and then you can manage the devices. Again, do those firmware updates, make configuration changes, as well as set alerts for when you've reached your data cap limit, when somebody's tried to log in or an unauthorized login attempt has happened, and then optimize your network. We provide enterprise-grade support with dedicated engineers for large accounts and advanced warranty replacement options. So why CradlePoint? We have the edge routing platform for highly secure, highly available networks. We've got the lowest total cost of ownership for distributed networks, from the site surveys and planning to the installation, the maintenance, hardware costs, and support. And we have an open and extensible network, an Enterprise Cloud Manager platform for smart and scalable network management. And we are the trusted leader in enterprise-grade networking solutions for distributed enterprise. And with that, we'd like to open it up for questions from the field, and David's been taking those as we've been typing them in.